Welcome, 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 everybody, to Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast. I am your host, Shayna Terrell, educator activist dedicated to the lifelong struggle for freedom and liberation for my people. Shout out to all my co-conspirators out there coming back for another week to support and listen to the great people that we have coming aboard. And thank you to all our new supporters out there. If this is your first time listening, we appreciate you. We thank you. But we also encourage you to like, share, subscribe, and rate the show. Tell us how you feel about it. Tell us how you're experiencing it. And for everybody in the room, make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend and tell them again. We are on all major platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. So please drop in, leave your rating, leave your reviews. And shout out to Brightbeam and the Center for Black Educator Development for providing us with this platform to talk to real people in the real struggle, doing the real work, y'all. So today's theme, we're going to get into it. Building a Black educator pipeline and freedom schools. With so many things happening in education, we are so hyped to see various models who are continuing the history, the struggle, and the tradition of resistance in educating our babies. So today, the National Director of CDF Freedom Schools will be here, a scholar, a thought leader. She is here, not be here, but a scholar, a thought leader. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Kristal Moore Clemons. She'll be joining us today. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. What's up, everybody?
Hey, we are excited to have you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. I'm feeling invigorated about the work ahead.
Yes, exciting, right? So we like to jump off with allowing folks to just tell us a little bit about yourself. What can you share with us about who you are? What should we know about your work, past and present?
Thanks. Well, I am a Chicago girl, first and foremost. Born and raised in the city, and I am the daughter of Pamela and Kevin and the granddaughter of Mildred and Eva. And I always like to give props, especially to my grandmothers, because they pretty much taught me how to be. I am an educator, and as you heard, most recently named National Director of the CDF Freedom Schools program, but I really look at myself as a person just committed to the liberation of brown and Black children in terms of, the Freedom Schools movement, culturally responsive pedagogy, culturally sustaining pedagogy. I was fortunate enough to go to some really good schools and have some really great mentors to learn innovative ways to do this work. And believe it or not, I wrote my dissertation on the history of the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Summer and the Freedom Schools movement of the 60s. And I worked as a servant leader intern in the contemporary CDF Freedom Schools movement. Yes. So really blessed to have my worlds, come together like that to do this work.
Isn't it amazing sometimes how things just come, boom, like full circle, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that your passion and your interest, right? Because to write a dissertation about something, passionate and interested in, and now here you are as a leader in the work. It's just amazing how the ancestors push us into things, right? And bring us back full circle. I love that. Can you share with us a bit about your journey into education? What inspired you to be an educator?
Freedom Schools, actually. I had a homegirl who had an internship with the CDF Freedom Schools. Shout out to Jamie Morris. She said, my church is hosting a freedom school. You should apply. I said, okay, cool. I don't have any plans this summer. Let me go check this out. So when I go to do the interview, they put you through a whole lesson plan simulation. And I'm women's studies and political science major, but I just love education. And then they were like, all right, you're hired. We're going to send you to CDF Haley Farm for the training. And then you're going to come back and work this summer. I said, all right, bet, let's make this happen. I I get to Haley Farm and my mind is blown.
Mm-hmm.
I see people like Reverend Joan Parrott, Alice Walker, Unita Blackwell, yes. Marion Wright Edelman. Yes. And I was like, what did I get myself into? And it was just mind blowing. It was so encouraging. There was a professor there named Dr. Greg Carr. He talked about how does your work speak to the after? And so that stuck with me. And I went home and I said, political science, women's studies, you've been good to me. I don't want to do law school anymore. I think I need to go get a PhD in education. Mm-hmm. And so I changed some things around. I got into graduate school and I have just been on that trajectory. So started teaching in Freedom Schools, but then I had graduate assistantships where I was teaching, Intro to Black Studies, Intro to American History as a teaching assistant. And then finally, when I got to my PhD program, I started teaching social studies methods to pre-service teachers. And then I realized, wow, there's such a significant gap in terms of how the teachers are trained to teach our children. And how do we bridge that gap? And so my worlds have been teaching in higher education, but always teaching in some sort of freedom school, whether it be, the one I started in Chicago, the Durham Freedom School, the Tallahassee, North Florida Freedom School, and even most recently, the Virginia State University Freedom School. Any university that I worked at, I always made sure to work with community to start a freedom school. And that's how I've been teaching. And it's really been so sustaining and just really a wonderful experience for me in terms of not just training me to be an educator, but also training me to be a better mom. I have 3 children, and it just helps me think about how do I listen to the young people in my life to make change.
You have given us so much in that one answer for a number of reasons. One, shout out to Dr. Greg Carr. He is a regular monthly guest on my show. That is my Baba. He's my mentor.
Yes.
So shout out to Dr. Greg Carr. But what you pointed out, which is really pivotal about a Freedom Schools movement, number one, the experience on a farm is like no other.
No other.
The amount of people that you get to connect with and the amount of Black elders that get to pour into you, but to see folks nationally, just from across the nation that has similar interests that you do. And it's really, again, the advancement and the liberation of Black and brown children and Black and brown people is just nothing like that connection. But the other thing that you point out is so pivotal is this how Freedom School flips and changes people's minds into understanding the importance of education. I too, like you, very similar, went to college, majored in political science and sociology. And being in Freedom Schools turned me right around and pushed me into education. Because understanding that social justice doesn't always have to be fought by law necessarily in the courtroom, but you can make an impact and make a difference by working with young people, by pouring into young people, and by making sure that this next generation is prepared to continue on the fight and the struggle. But being in Freedom Schools is what gave me that lens and that perspective and just, filled me up. I don't know if I would have got the same fulfillment trying to like navigate my way through law the way in which I did with the excitement and joy in working with young people. But you pointed that out too in your answer. Like it makes you a better mom, which in essence makes you a better person and a better leader. Because I don't have all the answers. This is an intergenerational movement.
Exactly.
And we know from meeting Miss Marion Wright Edelman, honey, she will introduce you all the way to Ella Baker, who believe that, this movement has to be in the hands of the young. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely and shout out to you.
Those things really became like personal mantras. And I really was kind of taken aback because I did not realize that I could have a job where my passion and purpose can intersect like that.
Yes.
And I always tell people I'm so grateful that I've had jobs as an educator where I get paid to think. I get paid to problem solve. I get paid to innovate. I get paid to create with children. And every day I look at it as a blessing. And, it helps me not be so stressed about, everything that's coming at us because it's not easy.
This is not easy work. This is soul work. This is hard work.
This is hard work.
It definitely is. but it eases it when you know like what you're in it for and what you're doing it for. I tell people all this, like, I love my job, especially in working in freedom schools. It was a joy to literally get up every day and go to work. People like, what is that about? I mean, like, it's freedom schools. Like, you have to experience it to understand it, to know it, and to be it, and to be able to lead this work, like, as your job. I just can't imagine the joy that it brings you. And again, a program that's impacted you, and now you have the opportunity, right, to train your replacements to turn around and impact others, has to be a phenomenal joy. Can you?
Yeah, I told myself, I said, I'm going to apply for this position as a 40th birthday present to myself. It's a new challenge. Because I had been teaching as a college professor for 15 years, but how can I serve an organization that has really served me so well? And I'm just grateful that, the stars aligned and I'm able to be in this role at this particular moment.
And I love that even in being in, higher ed for 15 years, you are truly able to see the gaps, especially the gaps in how our teachers are trained. And being able to catch some of that, and there's still some of that in the servant leader interns that come before you every summer, I think has to be an amazing, like, kind of like dichotomy on how you see that. Like, whew,
absolutely,
they need this, they need that, but you now have the power to give them, give it to folks. Can you tell us a little bit about CDF Freedom Schools? What is the goal of CDF Freedom Schools?
So the CDF Freedom Schools program is a true throwback to 1964. So Mrs. Edelman in the 90s, she gathered this group of folk called the Black Community Crusade for Children. And they had a meeting of the minds to say, okay, what can we do to strengthen, the resources for Black and brown children in this country? And the group came up with, well, we should reimagine the freedom schools. So in 1992, we had the first CDF Freedom Schools launch in Bennettsville, South Carolina, which is Mrs. Edelman's hometown. And then from there, we have branched out to well over 100 freedom school sites around the country. We're in 29 states, 90 cities, and we focus on the themes I can and must make a difference in myself, family, community, country, world, with hope, education, and action. And we have fully scripted lesson plans. We have integrated reading curriculum. We have a training manual. All of our freedom schools around the country start with this wonderful centering activity called Harambe, which is Kiswahili for Let's Pull Together. Yeah. So we run our programs. We are also staffed by college-age servant leader interns, like we were just talking about. So college students from all over the country, which is very reminiscent to 64. They come together, they get the training, and then they implement the Freedom Schools model within their local context. And we can look a myriad of ways. We can be in faith-based institutions. We can be in K-12 settings, institutions of higher education, community nonprofits. We even have some in our juvenile justice centers around the country. So we're a broad movement committed to literacy, particularly culturally sustaining literacy, because Mrs. Edelman always says you can't be what you can't see. And so making sure we put texts in front of our children where they see characters that have the lived experience that match their lived experience. So that's what we do.
Love it. And for those of you, CDF stands for Children Defense Fund, which is Ms. Miriam Ray Edelman's organization.
Yes, we're now being led by our new president and CEO, Reverend Dr. Starsky Wilson.
Okay.
So for the first time in the organization's nearly 50-year history, we have a new president.
Yes. I mean, Ms. Edelman has put in her time, honey. Sometimes the ancestors is like, listen, sis, you did well for us. Go on and pass the reins. So shout out to you guys for new leadership. I know it's going to continue and grow because it's laid on a very solid foundation.
Yep, she's officially our president emerita.
Yay!
And she still writes wonderful Child Watch columns and She doesn't come around as much, but she's there, and we honor her for all that she has given us.
Definitely. And again, I'm honored and blessed to have had the opportunity to actually meet her and be involved in Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools in the early 2000s. Also, for us, so when I say us, I'm talking about the Center for Black Educator Development. CDF Freedom Schools has been a great example and a wonderful model, and a model that works. And our program is very heavily focuses on teacher apprenticeships, but that model that Children's Defense Fund kind of took on from 1964 is something that is we believe to be super stark in our programming. And they're just some ingredients that just work, right? No matter what freedom school you walk into, you should see Harambe. That should be a thing. Number one, right? You want children and students to be experiencing Black joy, and everybody should do that. The great thing about Harambe is because it's let's pull together. Everybody's doing it. So it's not just children experiencing Black joy. It's the adults. It's anybody that's in that site experiencing this joy, this communal process together. And starting your day off with just love and community. So just those types of different components of the program and ingredients, no matter where you walk into, no matter who's doing Freedom Schools, some of the ingredients are just the ingredients. But again, we appreciate, love, and acknowledge Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools for leading the way on what it looks like to build a strong, comprehensive, scalable national model. Now, you did talk a little bit about the 1964 Freedom Schools. And I know for you, when you were becoming a doctor, you did your dissertation on 1964's of Freedom Schools. But you also, when I asked you about Freedom Schools and the movement, you talked about all of the beautiful women who were a part of this movement, all the beautiful women that you saw, that you met, that you got to experience on the farm. Can you talk to us about just women and the great teachers during the 1964 summer freedoms movement, and why was their role important?
It was pivotal because, much of the literature. So when I was doing the research to get ready for the dissertation, I saw two things. I saw a lot of male narratives published. And then I also saw a lot of white women's narratives published. And, no shade to the brothers and no shade to white women. However, I knew there were Black women on the ground doing this work. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I always center myself thinking about being Eva and Mildred's granddaughter and how the elder Black women in my life have shaped me. I thought, I got to find these women, time is of the essence. I did an oral history and really wanted to capture their stories because 10, 20, 30 years later, we want to be able to read them and have them documented that they were there and this is what they did. And that's what I did with my dissertation. So I was able to interview several Black women teachers from 1964.
That's dope.
One of them I'm still very, very close to, Dr. Gwendolyn Zohara Simmons.
Yes.
So she was gracious enough to take me in to share her story with me and, talk about what it was like to be a college student in 64, to be at a school like Spelman and to say, you know what, I'm a caravan to Mississippi and do this civil rights and resistance work. And then to realize how they really were so innovative with so limited resources, right? So understanding how they may have used, a church or someone's backyard or even a rundown tavern, right, to set up shop and build the space of a freedom school. They called their sisters and brothers from the North and said, hey, send me some materials, send me some magazines, send me some maps. I got to supplement what these children are not getting in their traditional Mississippi public school setting. And so for me, it was more about, number one, documenting the stories because we are here, we were here, and we will be here. And then number two is for me to kind of contribute a new perspective to the literature. For so much of what we read in even contemporary teacher education research, it doesn't talk about the ways of knowing of Black women's teachers. And we have a specific lived experience and a specific way of knowing that has sustained children, not just Black children, but has sustained children for a very long time. And so that's what I wanted to capture. That's what I wanted to get at. I mean, it was a very small study. You know, dissertations, you're tired. You're just trying to write, trying to finish.
Yes.
Eventually, I want to go back and, you know, comprise a manuscript to eventually write a book to really document, you know, what that time period meant for us as educators in this particular moment.
And that's so important because you point out a really large thing that gets overlooked a lot, and that's just the dismissal of Black women's contributions to society. So to say in your research, you know, you found male men, Black men and white women, not surprising, not shocking to me at all. But again, when you go deep and you study the women who were in these roles, they talk a lot about not putting all your stock and interest in like these one people or these figureheads, that this is a collective movement. And they were definitely in the background doing a lot of the gathering, the organizing, the training, giving confidence to young people, giving blueprints to organizing or strategies to young people, doing all of that. Black women were most certainly behind in the backbone of the 1964 Freedom Summer movement. So definitely major contribution to the work by finding that and studying that. And like meeting real women who were doing the real work. Like, right. You weren't reading somebody's memoir or looking at somebody's bio, like real women who were in the struggle doing the real work. That is what it is all about.
Yes.
What's also significant. Go ahead.
It was such a phenomenal opportunity because I made sure, you know, when you do research, you have a consistent interview protocol. So I was able to learn about how they grew up. I was able to learn about how they went to college. Then I was learning about why they even joined the movement. And then to find that, you know, these are my elders and we have such similar backgrounds. We have such similar passions. And it binded me to them and connected me to them. And it also made me be very intentional about how I connect with other Black women because we're in this together.
Yep. And what's significant about what you're saying and what you said, I don't think people realize, right? 1964 wasn't that long ago.
No.
These women are still alive. These people who were in this struggle, who were in this movement are still here and still alive. I think sometimes we talk about 1964, we talk about Jim Crow, we talk about segregation, we talk about it as it was like long ago, back in the day. Like it really wasn't that long ago. The fact that these people are still alive to witness against some of the craziest atrocities that are still happening in this country tells us a lot about who we are and who America is.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. So as you talk about ways of knowing and ways of being, what can we learn from 1964 Freedom Summer movement that we should be replicating today?
Ooh, so much. You know, it was such a great disparity. You know, for every 70-something odd dollars they would spend on a white child in Mississippi, they would only spend roughly 20-some odd dollars on a Black child in Mississippi. And so, you know, we're still dealing with those economic disparities.
Those inequities, for sure.
And the other thing is, you know, we had a robust Black teacher community. You know, part of my other research is understanding historically Black high schools and historically Black teachers, particularly in Virginia. And, you know, integration was one-sided. You know, white students didn't come to the Black schools. The Black students were forced to integrate the white spaces.
Yep.
And what did that do to all those Black administrators, those Black teachers, right? And so realizing that we come from a community of organized Black teacher professionals is very critical when you do this historical research, because I think the narrative now is that we don't care about education or that we're, you know, there's a shortage. Well, there was a robust Black teacher network.
Sure was.
And, systemic racism and institutionalized oppression broke that. And how do we, how do we get that back? And so that's really one of the other main things that I really gleaned from speaking with the teachers from 64. I also gleaned this ethic of care that was really unmatched in terms of, I'm going to be able to talk to your mom, your auntie, your cousins. We're going to all be together and really have conversations about what success looks like. And the expectation is that you are going to do great things. Nobody wakes up saying, my child is not going to succeed. Nobody wakes up saying that. And so the fact that that was high on the forefront of everyone's mind is an important lesson that we should remember, because we've always had the expectations to do great things despite how we were treated in this country or how we are being treated.
Yes, always the expectation of excellence in the Black community, and this narrative that seemed to be like super cancerous in eroding this notion that Black people don't value education is just super, super insane to me. Not sure where that, again, well, we know where it's coming from. Let's not say we're not sure where it's coming from, but we need to continue to do the work to combat that narrative because it just simply isn't true. Yeah. And you're absolutely right that the Black teacher pipeline was destroyed. And that's one of the number one goals of the Center for Black Education Development. Black Educator Development is to rebuild a national Black teacher pipeline because our children deserve it. Our community deserves that. As you talk about ways of knowing and being, just as Black women, the things that Black teachers pour into Black children, and not just Black children, all children, a sense of nurturing, a sense of care, high expectations with tons of love and tons of support. And again, being able to combat those narratives that education isn't important. And I love that you're doing a study on, and you said historically Black high schools. A lot of times people hear the words historically Black college. Can you tell us what it means to be a historically Black high school?
So interesting enough, so it's called the Virginia Interscholastic Association. And right after Brown v. Board of Education, roughly 1954, the Virginia General Assembly developed the VIA. And the VIA was because at everything at this moment was segregated. Student council, National Honor Society, all of the athletics, right? So all of this is segregated. So they created the VIA to really have a network of resources for Black high school students in the state of Virginia. And so what I found from my research with these historically Black high schools, they would actually do leadership development work. They would make sure that they would be, admitted to the historically Black colleges in the area, whether it be Norfolk State or Virginia State University. They had, whether it be athletics, the arts, all kinds of professional development activities and leadership activities for these high school students to thrive. And through my research, I found that there's a robust historically Black high school alumni base, and they are proud and excited, and they want their stories documented and captured because they talk about how they had such powerful educational experiences that were really filled with rigor, filled with encouragement, filled with lots of fun, and really just broad opportunities for growth and development.
I love that. That's dope. And you'll be getting into the work of documenting these stories.
Yeah. So at Virginia State University, they have the Montague Archives, which is actually where everything is housed for the VIA. So you can check out the website, viastory.org. And you'll see lots of primary sources you can download and review. But it's a wonderful archival tool, but it's also a wonderful teaching tool for younger children to know. Because in DC, you got M Street High School, you got in Chicago, you had Dunbar, you got historically Black high schools in cities all over the country. And the stories need to be captured and documented.
Yes. And I appreciate this perspective and this notion entering the space. Because again, I don't think people see that or look at that and understand what it means to have a historically Black high school. So thank you for enlightening us.
Not just the students' perspective, but also from the teachers'
perspective.
Educated. Yes, absolutely.
Like, what does that mean? And what impact does that have on them?
Mm-hmm.
Dope. So I'll be looking forward to getting into that. So thanks for knowing that website.
No problem.
So I know for you and for me, and I know for many others around the country, Freedom School has had such a major impact on who we are and who we came to be, especially in our adult life and our professional lives. So one of the things I've always taken a look at, especially being in Freedom Schools and then being in a K-12 space, is what kind of things am I bringing with me from the Freedom School space into a regular general education or regular K-12 setting. I would love to hear, what techniques do you think can current K-12 schools learn from Freedom Schools programs?
Well, the first thing I think they can learn is a shared respect for all students. The beautiful thing about the Freedom Schools model is you don't have to get an A on a test. You don't have to have a certain score on any kind of standardized assessment in order to be deemed great or in order to be deemed worthy. And so if we can get that mindset disseminated across the country first, because once you believe that all children are great and once you believe that all children can learn, there's nothing that you can't do in that classroom.
That's right.
But I think what the problem is that with, when I used to teach my pre-service teachers, they would have all these preconceived notions on who could learn, who could not learn, what parent could do this and what parent could do that. But see, Freedom School makes you drop all of those preconceived notions because you walk into the space with an open mind and an open heart. And if you don't, they're going to tell you real quick, that's not the Freedom School way.
Yes.
Back it up. Back it up.
Yes.
And I think you can build your lessons from there because you teach to potential, right? You don't worry about where their students are. You can do some differentiated instruction. You can do some breakout groups. You can get the students where they need to go, but you have to believe.
Yes.
You have to believe. And I think that is what Freedom Schools has taught me. And anytime I used to teach social studies methods, I would make them engage in Freedom School-esque, affirmations or activities, sitting in circles, good job, chants, just anything, cheers and chants. If you need a little brain break, okay, let's bring it back. Freedom Schools is what?
Red hot.
Yeah, get them hyped. Integrate those little things into your daily schedule to keep the energy flowing for learning.
Yes. And see, what's great about what you said, but I think people struggle to understand it, right? When you talk about Freedom School techniques and things like that, people will look at some of the things you're saying as like, oh, that's cute, but does that really help a child learn? No, it really does. Your belief in a child is the ultimate on spanning whether a child can learn or not, because if you don't believe a child can learn, you're going to treat them like they can't learn, which means exclusion from lessons, exclusion from extra support, exclusion from help. If you have a preconceived notion about a child, who they are, where they live, who they come from, all of those things affect how you then interact with that child, their parents, how much you pour into that child. And what's so complex, but so expansive about this notion of mindset is that, all of that starts in the classroom, but it bleeds out everywhere else. So when you believe that a community of people can't thrive, when you believe that a community of people can't achieve, that is how you begin to treat them.
Exactly.
And to connect that to being in a capitalistic society, right? You invest money in what you think is going to be able to grow or to multiply or be beneficial to you. So if you've already written off a community of people, if you've already written off a community of children, why would you invest in them with finances or with any kind of resources really to put it all together?
Absolutely. And
then here's how you get institutional racism, right? Here's how you get inequities all over education. So the point that you made, to me, of course, I'm understanding because I'm in the Freedom School movement and I know what it's like to believe in all children and believe that all children can achieve. It's very pivotal. So some people will look at that like, of course I believe in children. I wouldn't be working with them, but you don't. So challenge yourself, right?
And you have to ask yourself, but how do you believe? I say, if I see a child, doing something that one may deem inappropriate, or lashing out, that's not the opportunity for me to be punitive. That's for me, that gives me the opportunity to get down on that child's level and just say, hey, how you doing today? How are you? is everything okay? Not immediately jump into, a dismissive state. And I truly believe, we as teachers right now, there's not much we can do about how our building looks. There's not much we can do about who our principal or who our superintendent is doing, but we can control everything that goes on in that classroom.
Yes.
We can make sure those desks are in a circle. We can make sure you got posters of affirmation on the wall. We can make sure we're introducing material that the children can actually relate to.
That's
and
right.
so I think once you get the mindset that I can literally control my, four walls, and this is what I can do, and I can build community. If you talk to parents and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do with your child, this is what I need to be support so that we can go at this collaboratively, you're not going to have a parent tell you, no, that's not what I want to do. You're going to have that parent say, thank you so much for including me in the dialogue for what you want from my child. I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. We can't put these walls up. We have to be mindful and be open and always believe that our students can do really well.
Yes, I love that. And what's in your locus of control? I feel like that is the message I'm hearing. Stop saying what you don't have, what you can't get, what they ain't going to give you. What's in your locus of control? And that's most certainly very reflective in the spirit of 1964 Freedom Summer. Hey, what we got? We got a church. What we got? We got a tree. We want to sit on under this tree. What books we got? Okay. What words can we make to be able to teach and help children learn? Because again, the belief that all children can learn, but the belief that they deserve to, right?
Yeah.
They deserve what they're given. They deserve better. So going out there and fighting for that. So what is in your locus of control is super poignant to think about.
Yeah.
So you've already helped us to think and reimagine, right? Going into the 2022-2023 school year, what teachers can be thinking about, right? But do you have some other tips on how folks can reimagine our current education system?
Oh, yeah. First we got to vote, right? We got to make sure that we get the correct school board members. We get the correct elected officials. I think that we need to reimagine what parent and family engagement looks like. Yep. Now that we have experience with virtual education, there should always be a virtual call-in option for parent meetings or PTA meetings, right? Let the parents who are working call in. They'll have it on their phone while they're working, but they're going to be there and they're going to get some tips and they're going to get what you need them to get. I also think that we need to have more critical conversations about the curriculum, right? It's one thing to follow the state and what they have, but there are supplemental materials that we can put our heads together, whether it's through organizations like yours or through the Children's Defense Fund, right? Bring in those supplemental materials to give the children an opportunity to see themselves in the curriculum.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, much of what we have is just not there. It's not representative of children's lived experience. And I know teachers, we don't get paid a lot. We don't get the support. We're really treated poorly, honestly, as a field.
Yes.
But I think taking solace in what we can control and taking solace in the fact that it is a gift to be able to get up in front of a group of young people, right? Depending upon the age level, and still be able to have the confidence and the ability to impart knowledge.
Yes.
It's a gift and I don't take it lightly.
Most certainly a gift. And some strength and some confidence, okay? To be in front of young people every single day. Showing up and showing out every day for those young folks.
And part two is the at any point in the learning process, right? As the teacher, we can become the student.
Yes.
And the student can be the teacher, and humble ourselves to realize it's okay to have that intergenerational relationship with them. Set boundaries, let them know, listen, this is respect here. However, I see you have your knowledge base. Can you teach me a little bit?
Teach me. Yes.
And, level that power dynamic and you will see that child come alive.
You'll see that child come alive. You'll see your classroom come alive, but it's also you're going to come alive. And I think that for me, what builds enjoyment in the work always is being able to always be a student when I'm in the presence of young people.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's definitely important to set those boundaries. But when you do, young people know.
Yeah.
They understand. But
Yeah.
I get joy out of always being able to be in awe at how smart, intelligent, and powerful our young people are, and being a student when I'm in their presence.
Absolutely.
And the more you're a student to them, the more they're going to listen to you, and then in ways you can impart your wisdom.
Exactly.
So that intergenerational exchange and building is so important, no matter the age level.
Yep, no matter the age level. I do it with my young people. I do it with my college students. You know, whenever I teach a class, I'm like, all right, y'all. Okay, tell me. I need to know what's lit right now. What's hip right now. Put me on, people. Put me on.
Yes. What's lit? I still be saying what's hot. Go at it. I still say, like, what's hot? What's hot in the streets right now? Let me know.
Exactly.
How can I get my ear to the streets, y'all? Put me on. So,
put me on. Let me know what's popping, because I need to stay abreast of this. And y'all got the knowledge. And they always laugh. But then they're like, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
For sure. Definitely. Because they want to tell. And I think what we've just done is definitely give some examples of what being a culturally responsive educator looks like. And how that really is impactful to children, and doing it respectfully, not gimmickly, commercially, but asking young people to be invited into their world. I think we definitely talked about like how that is super culturally responsive and impactful. But in today's age, I know teachers have to kind of control what's within their locus of control, but I think educational leaders have a huge responsibility also in helping to support prepare teachers and make sure that they have what they need in this profession. What does culturally responsive educational leadership look like to you?
Culturally responsive educational leadership is going to be one that is, in my opinion, it's teacher-centered. It really has to be. I think when you have teachers in your building that don't realize or don't know that you as the superintendent, assistant principal, etc., have their back and want to support their professional growth, it is a lost opportunity. I think that's what educational leaders need to do. I also think that we really need to provide resources within the field of teacher education, because there's also, it's not just when our educators are teaching, it's also before they teach, right? When they are in these teacher education programs. So what kinds of things do we need to impart on them before they even get into the field? And I think that is what some strong culturally responsive educational leadership looks like. It looks like a conversation between the schools and colleges of education, deans, and superintendents across the country, right? Where we say, okay, this is what's happening on the ground. This is what's happening in the textbooks. How do we bring that together so that we have a well-rounded educational experience for our aspiring teachers and our aspiring leaders? Sometimes I feel like the two entities aren't talking.
No, they don't talk. And we can go into a whole nother podcast about that in terms of the lack of accountability on colleges and universities to make sure that teachers who are in their prep programs are coming out prepared. You have people going to get degrees in education, but not even coming out certified, or not being able to come out and even pass the certification test. So the purpose was for the degree that then in some chances can't be used because I can't get certified. But where is the responsibility on prep programs to ensure that people are leaving, being able to leave and have be qualified to be able to do their job, so to speak, based on whatever state standards.
Because other fields don't allow that to happen.
Exactly.
Right? So you see in the sciences, they offer supplemental instruction to make sure they're passing these exams, you know, and we need to provide the same thing in the field of education.
Agreed. Name me a medical program where you can come out with without being certified to practice medicine.
Exactly.
You're not. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to, like, we're going to work for 2 years and hope you get certified. If not, like you can't. But I always make the comparison on this show is like, when you think about life and death, people actually think about the physical. Nobody thinks about how the mind is also connected to the body. So if we don't treat the mind well, you're still killing the soul and killing the body. And teachers are in control of the mind. Yeah. They are doing surgery, just like a surgeon is doing open heart surgery. They are doing brain surgery on the mind of our children and on our future. So it's just as important to implement those same guardrails. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the field too, from an HR standpoint, we don't provide the same safeguards for our teachers.
Agreed.
Once they are teaching in the field. Mm-hmm. And so, you see a lot of corporations now talking about workplace balance and wellness. We don't have these conversations in the field of education.
No, teachers are expected to struggle.
Exactly. And keep going, work under duress. And we need to pivot that mindset.
Agreed.
If other industries can have wellness, the field of education needs to have wellness.
And if you don't, you're not going to have anybody left to teach these babies. And then we're going to have a real crisis on our hands. We already are in crisis right now with the teacher shortage and everything that's going on. So again, now more than ever, people need to be thinking about how we're actually going to pivot to be able to support teachers. An interesting question I have, though, because you pointed out already in your research in 1964, there were a lot of, about 1964, there was a lot of articles about men and white women. But that narrative is still true in terms of education. That is who is still right now in 2022 leading the forefront. Their stories are in the forefront of education. White women make up about 80 to 85% of the teaching force nationally. And if you look at the numbers in terms of CEOs or leaders of districts and superintendents, they're normally men. Yeah. So that same kind of narrative is still happening now. But if a Black woman was at the forefront of education today, what things do you think would be different?
I think the whole operation would be flipped upside down. Listen, from a beautiful, holistic standpoint, if you look at, some of the work, Annette Henry, she does a lot of work on Black feminist pedagogy. Patricia Hill Collins talks about Black feminist theory. If you look at some of this work and it talks about understanding Black women's lived experience as a criterion for meaning, meaning, the way we move, the way we care, the way we work, looking at that as a standard. Oh man, the field of education would be on fire. I mean, think about it.
It would be lit, right?
Yeah, it would be lit. And the first person that comes to mind is Septima Clark.
Yes.
And I think about all that she did with citizenship schools and Highlander, and even women like Fannie Lou Hamer, and all that she did in terms of, rural citizens of Mississippi and how she was fearless. The thing is, Black women are unapologetic and unashamed. They go for it. And they want all of our hard work, but boy, do they beat us down.
They do. They do. No recognition, no support, definitely no wellness checks. Because it's the narrative of the story that the Black woman is just born to struggle, which is insane. We don't deserve to be treated and lifted up and treated with care. Like it's our life to struggle. And that's insane.
There needs to be more research too that where there are Black women-led districts. I know of quite a few Black women superintendents.
Yes.
And they are some of the wisest women and some of the most thoughtful in terms of strategy that I've ever met. And so I think, collect that data, collect that information, and really kind of come up with a masterclass, and that can help.
Hey, new study alert. Dr. Clemons out here coming up with the study, child. New study alert.
Yeah.
It's a great thought to do that. So what are you looking forward to, I should say, for Freedom Summer 2022? What are you looking forward to?
So we are slated to serve nearly 11,000 scholars this summer in 109 sites. And so we've already begun our site visits, and it's just remarkable to be coming 2 years after this global pandemic, to see, full sites doing Harambe, full sites going on field trips, full sites reading these beautiful books about how amazing our culture is and how amazing both our past, present, and our future will be. I'm looking forward to all of the joy, all of that Black joy that is going to be experienced. I know the servant leader interns are going to be tired. They're going to be hot. But it's, as we always say, it's a summer of service, but a lifetime commitment. So it's something that will stick with you year after year. I'm looking forward to the friendships. I'm looking forward to the pre-collegiate pipeline, because we have a lot of sites on HBCU campuses this year.
Yay!
And I love the fact that our young scholars will see themselves as future grads, just because of being in that environment. So I'm excited.
I love that. And does this year have a social action message or theme for CDF Freedom Schools?
So we partnered with Youth versus Apocalypse, and we're talking about climate change and environmental justice.
Oh, dope. I love that. And your projects are centered around that?
Yes, the social action projects. National Day of Social Action will be on Wednesday, July 20th.
Okay.
So you're going to see sites around the country engaging in their iteration of environmental justice and climate change. So it's just a beautiful conversation about how that particularly impacts Black and Brown communities and why we need to continue to fight for that.
Love that. Love that. So listen, before we let you go, we always have a segment on this show called Thank a Black Teacher. So I would love for you to take some time and some space right now to thank a Black teacher or some Black teachers out here.
So I was thinking about this, and I want to give a shout out to the Black teachers at the Florida A&M University Developmental Research School, Freedom School. I want to thank Janelle Massaline. I want to thank Dr. Patricia West. I want to thank future Dr. Sheila Labissiere for all the hard work that they are doing on the ground in Tallahassee. I lived in Tallahassee for almost 10 years, and the fact that they are still running strong with that Freedom School site. They don't just do the work in the summer. FAMU DRS, they do the work all year long because it's a beautiful lab school connected to the university. And so I just want to thank those teachers on the ground for always working hard and building such good relationships with the families. They call them baby rattlers for a reason. The baby rattlers, they grow and they become, graduates of FAMU. So I just want to thank those Black teachers.
I love that. Dope. Dr. Clemons, listen, thank you for coming through today and blessing us with your knowledge, just with your presence, your feminine energy, all of it. It's been really amazing to talk and connect with you today. But we really want to thank you for coming and joining us on Building the Black Educator Pipeline. So I'm also going to drop just a second if you want to say any closing words to our guests and supporters and co-conspirators watching or listening today.
I just want to thank you all so much for the time and space and for listening. And thank you for allowing me to be in community with you, Shayna. This is just wonderful work you're doing. And thank you.
Thank you. Listen up, everybody. We want to thank you for coming back for another episode of Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast. We appreciate your support. Shout out to all our co-conspirators. We will see you back here next week, same day, same time, for another episode of Building the Black Educator Pipeline. Thank you all.